Everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. The FCC has announced that they're going to be awarding $65 million to over 170 organizations to help promote the Affordable Connectivity Program. We'll be right back with some details. Thanks for joining me with Broadband Deployment News. I'm Rick Usey with Zcorum. So, as I mentioned here, the FCC has announced $66 million in affordable broadband outreach grants. There's a couple of different grant programs that can be used by organizations to help promote the ACP. That's the Affordable Connectivity Program. It was part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, about $14.5 billion, I think, that's allocated toward subsidies that would go to internet service providers that provide service to low-income households. So households can get up to $30 per month, or they can get $30 per month toward internet service if they qualify for various low-income programs. If they're on tribal lands, they can get up to $75. So that's the ACP. And there were grant programs in addition to that that the FCC is setting up to help promote the program. So that's what this is. This is about two of the specific grant programs. So I will link, actually I've already linked in the description of this video to where you can download the news release and then the public notice. I'm looking at the public notice right now where we can look at that, but you can see that there's a link to that in the video description. So you see here the FCC is announcing today target funding allocations for the ACP grant program. Combined, the total amount of targeted funds today is $66 million. Today, as part of this announcement, the FCC is enlisting partners nationwide to serve as trusted community messengers and providing those partners with the funding and resources needed to implement innovative strategies to reach historically underserved and unserved communities. So when it's talking about underserved and unserved, they're not talking about it really broadband in those definitions, or at least they shouldn't be, because the ACP can be used by anybody anywhere. So you could live in an area that has 5 internet service providers, be perfectly served. You could have gig service from a fiber provider, a cable provider. You could have fixed wireless, whatever. You can still participate in the ACP. So I think they're talking about low income. To reach historically low-income communities, I would imagine is what they're talking about here. Upcoming changes will make the application and enrollment process easier by reducing the number of steps required to apply and improving language clarity. There's been some complaints about that from folks that it's a little bit hard to apply. The ACP Outreach Grant Program includes the following sub-programs: National Competitive Outreach Program, or the NCOP, the Tribal Competitive Outreach Program, or the TCOP, Your Home, Your Internet Outreach Grants, and the ACP Navigator Pilot Outreach Grants. Today's funding announcement is for the NCOP and the TCOP, and they say funding for those other programs will be forthcoming. In determining funding allocations for the NCOP and the TCOP, they reviewed 350 grant applications, and I totaled it up earlier, it was over 170. I think it might have been 171 or 177, I can't remember, but it's somewhere in there. It's below 180, above 170. I'll show you real quickly a brief glimpse of those, and you again can download this document and get the complete list. They reviewed 350 grant applications. Submitted applicants were assessed using the following 3-step process. They wanted to look at eligibility. Were they eligible? And did they fill out a complete application? Their merit. Did they have the quality of the quality of the proposed projects, and the cost and budgets, and then the risk. Was it fiscally stable applicant where that money would be used and not at risk? So again, total funding, the NCOP, that would be the national, that would be $60 million, and then a little over $6 million for the tribal programs. And then again, at the bottom of this is a list of all of those that are getting the money, how much they're getting, what state they're in. So you can see just, for example, Rural Alaska Community Action in Anchorage is getting $500,000, Community Action Association of Alabama getting $250,000, City of Montgomery, $250,000. There's various kinds of organizations. Could be a state, could be community organizations. You got the County of Los Angeles on here. You got Mexican American Opportunity Foundation in California. City of New Haven in New Haven, Connecticut. Goodwill Industries of Southwest Florida and Fort Myers. So, and they're getting $200,000. So quite a lot of money going out here. 65 million sounds like a lot. In fact, I was thinking, well, I wonder if they should have applied this toward the actual funds because we don't, you know, we don't know yet if the ACP is going to be refunded. But I did the math, and it's like with 16 million current people on the ACP at a minimum of $30 per month, that's $480 million a month. The 65 million would be hardly a drop in the bucket. It would cover like 4 days of subscriptions under the ACP. So when you start talking about money, you can see how much this program costs when you start talking about dollars and seeing what it's really costing here. So, and then I also wanted to just look at this article on light reading here from Nicole Ferraro. So Biden's budget includes $400 million for rural broadband and a shout out for ACP. So the budget came out, and it mentions here, she mentions that the 2020 budget plan on Thursday includes $400 million for the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Reconnect program to provide grants and loans to build broadband in unserved areas of the country. So USDA Reconnect's been around for quite a while, so another $400 million is going towards that. There were funds prior to the Infrastructure Act. There were funds included in the Infrastructure Act that boosted the Reconnect program and added funds, and now there's $400 million more coming from that. So these are additional funds, $400 million in additional for providing broadband in very rural areas. It has to be in a rural area. A lot of times it tends to be farm areas, those kinds of things. So this will be supplementing what's already available through the BEAD program and through the USDA Reconnect program that, again, was boosted by the Infrastructure Act. But down here it mentions, honorable mention, the ACP. While some in the industry hope to see the White House call for funding the ACP in its budget proposal, the program was only mentioned in the context of the administration's progress. So they talked about, hey, we've done a great job, but they didn't say anything about, you know, how this might continue as far as funding. They mentioned the fact that, again, they've got over 16 million households signed up, and that's increasing. And they just awarded $65 million to get even more people on it. So the funds won't last long. According to Joel Thayer, president of Digital Progress Institute, which advocates for telecom policies, the White House calling out the program shows that it's clearly a priority, even if the budget proposal lacks specific funding for the ACP. Further, he said keeping it out of the budget may be better as it prevents it from getting cut or caught up in what is likely to be a months-long political battle between Democrats and Republicans. Instead, it kicks the issue back to Congress to address through separate legislation. He encouraged both the industry and the FCC to push Congress for funding. So I think that is a good point. It is better. The more things you pack into these mega bills, these omnibus kinds of packages in this huge budget, the more contention there is. So we never seem to pass a budget, and we never seem to get a balanced budget, but let's handle it separately. I think that's a good idea. It says here, or this says here, but while many casual viewers of Congress are wringing their hands over whether there's hope for another ACP funding bill, Thayer said he's optimistic given the political reality of cutting a program that currently subsidizes broadband for millions of Americans. And I've mentioned this before, that once you have what appears to be an entitlement, you start giving somebody money and they feel like they're entitled to it, it's really hard to take that back. A politician has a hard time coming in and taking something away. It's easy to give something, and it's hard to take it away. So it says here, he mentions you're going to have to go back to your district and tell them that on principle, you have to pull away this benefit that they rely on for connectivity to make some sort of political point, he said. And it's not necessarily a political point. It's more of a political thing, I think, to actually keep providing the money if you're doing it for political reasons. In other words, if you want to keep getting elected, and it's like, well, we got to keep this program going. It's not necessarily a political point to say, you know, we have to really look at our spending. And I think we all realize we need to look at our spending in this country, the amount of debt that we have, and how we're going to do this in the future. How are we going to make this more, you know, something that lives on? I see here Patrick Farrell's asking, will this be an ongoing program? Well, that's a good question, Patrick, because that's the unknown right now. I mean, there was a certain amount allocated with the Infrastructure Act, again, $14 billion or so, but that was not enough to cover it for very many years. And as we're looking at it now, with 16 million people signed up and 65 million now that's going to be going to promote it to even more people, they're thinking that it's probably going to run out now as early 2024, so early next year. The funds will be gone. And then the question is, what do you do with that? So Congress has a couple of choices. They could make this a permanent type of entitlement program like Social Security, for example, where it's just something that they have to try to fund all of the time, or they could do like they did before and allocate billions of dollars for a few more years just on time as we do that. Another thing I'd really prefer would be this be somehow they take what they're doing now, because we're currently providing a lot of money and going to be providing even more for the deployment of broadband in areas that are very expensive to provide broadband. So the deployment portion of that, getting the infrastructure built out, is being handled by all of these funds. We've got the USF, the Universal Service Fund, which you'll find on your phone bill, which funds some of these high-cost areas, and some of that's about managing these high-cost areas, and was really about phone service, but really it's now being applied to broadband. A lot of the funds are coming from phone. They need to totally restructure that and make that something where it's funding for what people are using now, which is broadband, because even people on the phone now are doing it generally over voice over IP, or they're on their cell phone. So they should, in my opinion, somehow restructure USF so that when you're paying that fee on your broadband bill, if you can afford broadband, you pay a fee on your broadband bill. It's $4 or $5 it might be up to now. I don't know. It keeps going up. But you pay that, and that helps to subsidize those folks that can't afford broadband. They need to do a couple of other things. They need to probably limit the number of people who can get it, because right now it's 40 to 50% of the households in the United States actually can apply for this. So that would be almost half. That would be a little more than half the country providing subsidies for a little under half the country on broadband. It seems like that's probably not restrictive enough. This really should apply to those people that really would have a hard time affording broadband, because you don't need to get a gig service to be able to participate if the broadband is going to help you do things like get a job or improve your life in some way. So that needs to be looked at, because you've got a lot of taxpayers subsidizing that, or people that are buying broadband. So that's something that needs to be looked at, is maybe they need to reduce the number of people that can get it to people that really need it. And then they need to make sure that they look at fraud, those kinds of things, make sure that those people that are signing up are doing it legally and that they're not taking advantage of the system, because there's lots of waste in government. And we want to be able to really provide this to the people who need it. I think those are some things that need to be looked at. And I like it better if it's something where consumers are doing it, because again, we have so much debt in this country that we're not paying for. We really cannot service the debt that we currently have right now. It's just a tremendous amount of money that we owe, and that keeps going up as we keep passing these bills and multi-trillion-dollar budgets and multi-trillion-dollar bills that are just the last few years have just been ridiculous, really. So the amount of money that we're spending now, some of it's going to good use. I mean, it's great that we have broadband, and actually, to be able to put this money toward broadband will actually help improve things, and it will help more people get jobs. It will help improve tax revenues, those kinds of things. So if you're providing money for infrastructure and it's, let's call it shovel ready, where you can actually go and do something and you are improving the lives of people, then that can have a positive impact. So I like that portion of things. But there are other things that we're doing that we're spending where it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So the government is really good at spending money sometimes, and sometimes it's not good where they spend it. So I think we're all aware of that. But yeah, so that is the big question, is how long will this go? And then will it be renewed? So that is the $14 billion question, maybe, if they're going to renew this for another couple of years. And again, think about it this way, that when we started this, it was $14.5 billion, I think, from the ACP. And that was with a limited number of people signed up. We had people signed up through the emergency connectivity program, which was part of the coronavirus package that passed. And that was specifically meant for people that were having hard times due to the virus, due to the pandemic. But the ACP that was not about the pandemic. That was about low income. So we had some money from the emergency broadband benefit. That's what that was called. Emergency broadband benefit went into the ACP when the ACP was formed. And so you had a certain number of people on that, and then that really expanded. And now we'd be starting out from scratch. Right now it's 16 million. By the time this 65 million gets put to use, it could be 20 million, 24 million people that are using this benefit. And again, that's $30 at a minimum every month, times however many millions of people you have on there. That 14 billion would last even less now if it started out at that number. So that's a lot of money to be funding this. There's got to be a better way to do it. But as the article mentioned, it's going to be really hard for anybody in Congress to say, hey, we're going to have to take this away. We're going to let this lapse. Maybe they'll feel like they won't, if they don't do anything, it lapses, but they'll still get blamed. So it's going to be hard for them to talk to their constituents that take advantage of this program. I should say that use the program. I don't say take advantage of it, because it is useful for people that can't afford broadband. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. If this was helpful or useful, if you give me a like on the video, I'd appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and click the little subscribe button, not right there that you see on the screen with me, but down below on YouTube. Click the subscribe button, click the little bell to be notified when I'm live. Thanks a lot, and I will see you next time for Broadband Deployment News. Take care.